Install video, Predator or Toro, but today Predator bar for the next gen Ford Ranger. We're gonna show you how to do it. Tearing off the bumper, put it on the bull bar. Let's get on it. Okay, now we're gonna pull the top of the grill off. So you got little scrivets here, and we need a Phillips head screwdriver and a trim tool. There you go. 13. Looks like you got 13 to remove, and then you can just pull the panel off.
I think so, yeah.
Look at that. All right, so next we've got a little bolt there holding the grill on other side in 8mm tool. And then we're gonna disconnect the harnesses as well. Now, don't lose your tools, or sorry, your fasteners, because these ones will go back in.
Come all the way out.
You just pinch that, pull it out. All right, so basically pinch that together to make it a circle because it's all brand. Pull them apart. Then we are, back this up, gonna take the number plate off and the housing for the number plate. And you can see there's some screws hiding behind the number plate, and they look like another 8mm. Next, we're gonna basically pull the grill out. So grab up the top, gently pull and release it. And then there's clips along the bottom. And this is the retainer for this hose.
And there's a retainer for that.
Trim tool. Pull that out. There you go. That is how you remove the grill. All right, so we've got, let's see if you can see it here, holding the bumper on. We got a clip, 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 and 2 bolts there. These are great with a trim tool. Now, after we do this to the middle, we're gonna start on the wheel arches. Again, see, these ones aren't gonna be reused because we're not gonna reuse the bumper. $10mm socket for these 2 here. All right, wheel arch time. Now at the wheel arch here, we got these little scrivets along there. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Take this one as well, 5. So those ones are just with the trim tool. That one a trim tool on a Phillips head. This little access panel here, same. 1, 2, 3, and we'll pop it out of the way. Underneath, there's also a small little screw with a T25 Torx bit for that one. So you don't have to take the top one off, you can just peel it out of the way for that panel. Okay, now that's done, we can pull the flare. So you got some clips holding it.
Just back past the...
Just past that top fastener that we took out. So you're gonna pull it just enough so you can actually pull the bumper out. So remember to do that for both sides. All right, underneath the car now, you'll see there's some screws here. Ones with the big, tall, thick head. Take them off. The ones without, you can leave on. So it looks like another 8mm.
Yep, they're 8mm.
And
there's one on the other side too.
There's one on the other side. So you can leave all those ones in the middle, because that's just holding this trim piece on, which is gonna come with the bumper. Now, in that access panel, you see those 3 screws there? 8mm. If you got a little ratchet, like that, like I'm talking little, perfect. Otherwise, it'll take some time with a spanner, but those need to come off next. Okay, so I was wrong. It's a 6mm, so it's an M10 in there, not an M8. Okay, now there is a little clip in there. If you can zoom in, there. you got to pinch it with some pliers to release it, and so the bumper can push away. I can't really show that and do it together, so I'm just going to do it, and you got to trust me. All right, you can see now that we've pinched it and pushed it out, that's the clip, and the bumper basically held in place hardly at all, so barely touching it, and it will fall away. So we do that for both sides, and then we will be able to pull the whole bumper off. We'll then need to unplug the fog lights and the parking sensors. All right, the bumper is now come off. Now, we need to take the parking sensors off the bumper and pull the crash bar off. So some more little scrivets here. We're going to pull off the foam. Looks like there's just those two there. Okay, so this crash bar needs to come off as well. Those 6 bolts are going to pull off next. And your radar is going to come with it, and we are going to take that radar off the crash beam because that's going back on the bull bar. Now, before we do that, this harness here has got a retainer there, a little Christmas tree. We'll pull that off. And then one further in there, pull that off. So when we do pull the crash beam off, we don't put extra tension on the loom. And then there's another one further up in there. 13 mil socket. All right, so don't lose these. You are going to reuse them. Now, 2 torque screws, and we'll remove this whole housing off the crash bar here. Okay, so you can pull that off now, or taking the cover off, getting yourself a trim tool here. It actually rotates on these as well. 1, 2, pulling the clips on the outside off will allow us to reveal your radar. Don't lose these, you'll need to reuse them.
And then
We'll unplug it. It should be easy, but it doesn't look like it is. Oh, it's actually plenty hard to get in there. All right, and retainer. Okay, now we're going to reuse this. No? Yes.
we're using that, the plastic one.
Okay, reusing the plastic one. Okay, so this shroud here needs to be trimmed right along there. And we need to remove this air guide. And we're going to lower the bash plate so that we can take off the tow hook on that side and the bracket on this side. So when we can put on the Off-Road Animal ones, you can have a tow hook on both sides. Your vehicle might have tow hooks on both sides, but you're going to use ours, so that's great. So first thing first, let's take this one off so we can cut along here. So you are going to mark this line. So see where this protrusion is here, right below it. And then the easiest thing to do is to actually cut this when it's off the car. So taking off these and all the clips to pull this whole thing off.
And this is the
Okay, we've got the air guide pulled off. We've trimmed it so we can basically put it back together. How's that? And there's also 2 up there, which unfortunately I'm going to have to use a ratcheting spanner. Okay, so removing the bash plate, there's 2 bolts on the outside, 2 on the inside. So the ones further in underneath, you just loosen them Well, you'll take these ones out completely. 15mm socket. So when we take this tow hook off, it's going to pop away from the bottom of the intercooler here. So your intercooler is going to want to fall away once you take both off. Get yourself some cam buckle straps or really long cable ties, and you want to support the intercooler up on the top bracket here. So when I take this off, it's not just going to drop your intercooler. Now these bolts here have a lot of thread locker on them, and they're very tight. So endeavor, you will get there. I'm not going to show it on camera because you're going to go deaf from how long it takes, even with a gun. So that's the tow hook off. Keep your bolts because we are going to reuse them. So now everything's pulled apart except for on the outside here, we're going to be taking this bracket off. And on the other side, same bracket, and we're going to flip the horn up the other way. So you can pull the horn off the two little bolts there, and then we'll remount them onto that bracket there without the main one. So you'll basically separate them. There you go. Both of them are in, looking nice and pretty. Now with the bumper off, we need to take the factory fog lights out. So these little screws here, again, you need your Torx bits and sensors. So to pull a sensor out, easiest is that's your lock there, and then squeeze it together and you can pull it off. So your sensor's free, and you pry those two apart and you can pull your sensor out. So we're gonna leave the factory housings in because Off-Road Animal's gonna supply you some new plastic ones, which look like that. And then your sensor basically plugs right in like that. So we're gonna supply you some double-sided tape and some adhesion promoter, which looks like that. So you put the adhesion promoter, a little stick, put it on the bar, and put your 3M tape here, stick it on, and away you go. So we'll do that next. Oh, also, you'll need to take the loom off. So all these connectors here, basically get your trim tool and pull it all off because the loom needs to relocate obviously into the new bull bar. All right, now we're gonna fit a sensor to the bar. You'll need some isopropyl alcohol. What you wanna do with that is wipe the front face of the sensor housing clean. Also wipe the bull bar clean. Then we're gonna so this comes with a stick, the adhesion promoter. Very important, use this so it stays on. Basically you crush there and the liquid gets through and you can paint it on. And we have our little strips here. So we put those. Now on this bar, you'll see a little keyway there. The non-keyway, that's where the actual wires come out and the keyway locates in. We're going to have it go sideways like that for all the sensors. So the wires are facing down. This is an XLT Ranger, so we're only 4 sensors. Some of the higher spec ones will have 6 sensors. So to do this, you can take that off. Oh, we almost forgot the adhesion promoter. You hear a crack. You see it getting wet there. Not too much. Obviously leave enough room for the sensor. Then we're going to actually use the sensor to locate when we put it on. So we can push the sensor in. You can hear it click when it goes in. All right, peeling the backing off. This is actually the worst part of this, actually getting that tape off. If you don't have any fingernails, it's really tough. I've got short fingernails, but just enough. All right, then we just use the protrusion of the sensor. Now make sure you got that white or that clear plastic ring on it to locate it. All right, stick it on. You got to hold it for about 10 seconds. And we can plug the wire in, ready to go. Let's do the rest. All right, now we're going to put the cage nuts in. So a cage nut is a little sucker like this. It's a nut in a cage. Hey, how good's that for a name? So what you do is get one end in. You can usually pop them in by hand, but if you can't do it by hand, you can get a screwdriver and just on the foot there, push it in. Bang. How good is that? You know, 10 of them all the way along. Now with the sensors, we got the middle ones facing down, the outside ones facing up. And if you're doing it on this side facing in, if you're doing one on the all the way in the extremity. Okay, so while we got the adhesion promoter out, we got the bottom of the grill support bracket. You can see there in front of you. That's going to go onto the grill. So we'll put the adhesion promoter on and fit the grill bracket. So again, gotta have fun pulling the little strips off. Chris is having fun with it now. All right, show that again. Put it in place. Okay, with the bend towards the top of the car, away from the bottom there. All right, we'll put that on now. While Chris is doing that, I'm gonna run the loom for the sensors. So if we remember, the connector was gonna stay on this left-hand side here of the car. And there's a lot of holes in here that you can actually run the wires through for the sensors and also the fog light as well. So you can see the difference here, the two sensors and the fog light. So we'll run all three of those. They're the top here. Actually, sorry, not all three. Not the middle one. Just the fog light and the end sensor. All right, and we can plug in the sensor. Don't forget to lock it. Middle one. All right, and do the same for this side on the outside too. Again, if you have a higher spec one like a Wild Track or a Platinum and an Everest, you will have the extra one going all the way through to the end. And next, we are going to put a 22-inch light bar, an off-road animal light bar in the middle of this. So we're going to stand the bar up. You don't have to have a table like this. You can just put it on some stands if you want. These tables make it super easy to hold the bar up. So we're going to put the light bar in there, and then we're going to put our back brace on. Oh, one other thing. If you do only have 4 parking sensors, we do include a sensor cap for this outside hole. Basically, just push it in. Voila. Okay, so off-road animal light bar, put the brackets on sides. Now, before you put it in, make sure you take off this blue protective film. All right, don't leave it on. You don't need it on, it's just protect the glass. So put the light in from the back. And with the bolt supplied, basically we'll mount this bad boy in here. And then we're going to put our brace on the back. Now also, you can see this infill panel here, this headlight infill. With the M6 bolts here, we're going to mount that one there, leave it loose at the moment with the bolts going up. So once it's on the car, you can position it to exactly where you want. So we'll do that for both sides as well. Pan brace. Basically, it locks the top with this gusset here, keeps it nice and stiff, especially if you have lights on top. If it'll resist them wanting to vibrate like that, and gives it strength, top a lot of strength. So that's how it goes. And little M6 button heads, 12 mil long ones for underneath and 16 mil long for the top. And basically you can pop that in, hold that up, and And we'll line up the bottom ones as well. So obviously do this once the light is in. So this is the stealth hoop. You can also put a round hoop on there. It's easiest to put this on before putting the bar on the car, and then we have another 22-inch light. So put that one in there, put the bolts in, and you're ready to go. Yes, you can do it after, but it's a lot harder, so make sure you do it now. Or you can just put the round hoop on, but we're going to run the stealth hoop. If you don't want to run any hoop, you can just put lights, like round lights right on top of the bar, or a light bar, whatever you see fit. We're going to pull the radar off its bracket. Basically, you just grease onto it. Don't pull too hard, but you... and there you go. It's pulled off. Now we're going to put this on our bracket. So we've put the winch fair lead on to the center mesh. If you're not running a winch, obviously don't worry about that. Now we're going to put the camera together. Sorry, the radar.
So you've got the U-shaped bracket, the cover plate, and the radar module. So the U bracket sits on top of the radar module, and then the cover plate sits on top of that. Note that this can go two ways. There should be a bigger gap here. If it's partially covering the holes, that's the wrong way around. So it goes like this. 6x30 bolt through the whole lot, and a flange nut on the back. So that's the case on both sides of the bottom of the radar. And for the top bolt, we need to put 6x30, but there needs to be 2 flat washers that go in between to shim it out so that it's the same orientation as the factory mount. So that's a bit fiddly. Generally find it's easiest if you have it. I can't see what I'm doing while I'm showing the camera. But yeah, 2 washers in between there.
So the 2 washers go
in that gap between the U bracket and the radar module.
So 2 right in that gap there. Okay, as you can see, the 2 washers are there. So you got the cover plate, the bracket, 2 washers, and then the radar.
And then this goes in from the back into there.
Oh, like a glove.
And secured on with 6x16s.
I'll get the 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's how you fit the radar. So if you're relocating the camera will go above it. I'll show you that soon. All right, fitting the number plate flip. So you got your M8 bolt going through the outside and a nylock on the inside and nylon washer between them, and basically fits like that. And then you tension up your nylock and your bolt there, so when it's like that, it can stay up all by itself. Well, not the whole bracket, I mean just that. And then we can fit the number plate, or your number plate. And if you're not relocating the camera, that's good to go on the car. If you have a hoop or some lights on top to get in the way of your camera, then you can relocate the camera here. Okay, time to put the mounts on the car now that we've got it all stripped. I've got one side completely on here as a reference, then we're going to now put them on this side over here. So we've got a few brackets. We've got our impact absorbers here. Now this allows your vehicle's airbags to still work in a sense of an accident. Now your toe points, your recovery points are basically sandwiched together. And then we have a little bracket that goes underneath the chassis there. And the main purpose for this one is to hold up another little bracket which basically supports your intercooler. And it supports the bash plate. And also supports the bash plate. All right, so let's get it on. I'll get a little bit of a closer look. First up, we grab the impact absorber. Now, that little flange coming up there to the outside of the vehicle.
He's just
So you got a left and a right. Now the bolts that we had in the center that was holding the factory crash beam on, we're going to use those again.
Yeah, it's easier to go around. Like that.
There. All right. So we're only going to make everything loose at the moment, because what we're going to do is measure the bull bar so that we get the mounts in the right place. And then we're going to test fit the bull bar to make sure our left and right's in the right position before we tighten everything down. All right, so factory one's in there, and then M8s through the holes that have nothing in them, with a flange nut on the back. All right, so we also have a lollipop nut plate. Now what this is you're gonna put it through the chassis to hold the nut, or sorry, to hold the bolt for this one. So that top bit there will go up into there, and that looks like an M10. I need an M10 washer, I got one here. All right. Is it the right length? Yes, it is. So, hold on to position. Oh. All right, so the nut plate straight through the middle. It's an M10 as well. And I need an M10 washer. And then this one here underneath is gonna reuse the factory bolts. The ones that are super tight with a lot of thread locker on it.
You need to sandwich in that one as well. So it goes.
And we'll sandwich in this one here like that. So that flange goes on the inside to take the next bracket. Now, none of these bolts are going to be tightened up yet, because we do need, like I said, to arrange the orientation of the bull bar on it. So, just starting everything, keeping it all loose. And this little one here is basically going to eventually line up to take the intercooler there. See if you can see that a little better. There it is there. All right. So I'm going to put the rest of these bolts in, and then we're going to line it up. Okay. So it's all in position loose. Now, my engineer tells me this is going to be one piece in the future. So you saw me put it in two. If you get it in two, great. If you get it in one, don't be surprised. Okay, so now, looking over here, the distance between these mounts, we're gonna measure, but we're gonna adjust. So we're gonna measure the same thing on the bar. Wow, the powers of movie magic on a tripod. So the mounts are on the outsides of this, right? So 800. So basically, when we do these mounts on the car, we need to have 800 between them. So right now, we're at 803. We actually want 2 to 3 mil, 2 to 4 mil really, wider, but we want to be centralized. So you can probably use an edge of the chassis and an edge of a bracket and see if you can get them sort of the same. Then we're just going to nip up 1 or 2 bolts, and then we're going to try the bar on to see how it looks on the outside of the body. Because sometimes the manufacturer, when we put the body on the chassis, they're a little skew-if. So it's not unusual to then have to shift all the brackets over to one side or the other side. That doesn't mean your car's made wrong, or it doesn't mean your bull bar's made wrong. All that means is when the factory put the body on the chassis, it's a little crooked. Happens to a lot of cars, especially Fords. So we'll set this up at 800. I'll nip up a couple bolts, and then we'll put the bar on and just see how the gaps look. Before we put the bar on, we're gonna put our plastic infills. So these are the outer infill panels here. So to do that, we have our plastic infill, our mounting bracket, obviously the hardware. So we're gonna reuse these holes here. I have my 10 mil. Now these are important because they actually hold your headlight into place.
Torque them.
So definitely don't over torque them either.
And make sure they go back in the same spot too. They're actually different.
Does it matter?
See, one of them's painted and one of them's...
Oh. No, oh yeah. Okay, there you go. So the painted one goes down the bottom of the
No,
knob.
it goes at the top. Painted one goes at the top. Yeah, like that.
Okay. I was doing it wrong. My engineer just told me that. The painted one goes at the top. You can see where they painted over it there. Apparently they're different. Okay. Always start things by hand first and don't go straight to the tools because you will cross thread them. Okay, so we've got the bracket on. The bolt's in the right spot. Now, this bad boy here just fits like that, right? So you're following flare, so your flare falls on in there. We are going to bolt that up in here. So we're using some M6 hex bolts. And we're basically going to have that hex going from the inside. So when we put it like that, that access panel that was there. Okay, now it's time to do the flare cut. All right, for cutting the flare, you mark, get your bit of tape and just follow the line coming through, and then you trim right there, obviously all the way off. So before we actually put the bolt bar on, which will help us with the alignment, so onto the cut. We're going to basically push those in near the headlights, the clips on top, and then a new little bracket on the bottom. Line up there on the support there, put our bolt in. Alright, so our clips on the top and our bolt, and then we can put the bar on. So, I said clip, I actually meant bolts. Those little ones with the 8mm head. One there, one on the other side. And then you're going to reach in from underneath the grill for that bracket. So all the way behind you'll have the nut, and from just in front of the grill, you'll be able to put the bolt for the lower bracket. The lower bracket, you'll see the bolt in there on top of the bracket. So you put your hand all the way behind to get to the nut, and your hand just in front there. It's very easy. Okay, let's put the bar on, see if it fits left and right. Now that we've tested the bar and we know our left and right is where we want it, and we've done up a couple bolts, what we need to do is there's a sequence actually in doing up the mounts. So first thing first, all the bolts on the front you want to do up. Next, we're going to do up the one on the side that goes through the middle here. That brings it all across. Nice and tight, all right, because that's part of your toe point. Now, there is the bracket underneath that holds up the bracket holding the intercooler mount. We want to basically position that. So we're going to make sure we can get the intercooler support bracket. See if I get you a closer look. There you go. In place. So with that in place, just holding that there, we know this is right. We're going to do it that one there. All right, so we'll do it the back one now. Now you want those really, really tight. Check your torque specs online for on Google, because that's holding your toe points together. All right. Now holding this into place, we can do up the bolts right here with a 13. So what we want to do is we want to lift it and actually hold it into place so it's actually supporting the intercooler. If I can see the bolt, that'd be good. Sometimes you just gotta hold it. All right, then we can release the strap here. Do that for the other side. And the intercooler is nice and held within its rubber so it can move. All right, now we're going to go through on the other side, and the rest of the M10s, we'll do them up. Now, time to put the bar on. You can use 2 people or a trolley jack with some timber and something underneath. Hydraulic lifting table like this is the easiest. I know most of you are probably just going to use 2 people. So offer it up and you put some bolts in. The real benefit about this table is I can just drive it in myself like that and then pump it up to get it to where I want. So what we do now is we're going to use our M12 by 30s here to put them through, and we want about a 20 mil gap around all the points so that we don't actually hit the car, because your car is on your vehicle. Basically your chassis is separated from the body on rubbers, so they move independently, so you don't want them contacting when you're driving over a rough road or going off road. So what I'm going to do now is position it, get it as nice and even as I can, and then tighten up all the bolts and take the trolley out. So I'll do that now. Now we've got the bar on and the position that we want it. We've put these infill panels, the inner infill panels, where we want, and from underneath we've torqued them up so they're nice and tight. If you're fitting a winch, now's the time to do it. So what we're going to do is slide the winch in the front here. Now this is a winch off another car that we had in the workshop here, so I'm going to put the cable on after, but generally your winch already has the cable already on it. Throw your electrical cables around the back. There we go. So we're going to put our bolts up through the bottom, torque them down, put a rope on, run our cables, and then our mesh panels go on next. Okay, so we've got the winch in. Because I'm going to take this bar off as a prototype bar, I'm going to put the Toro bar on soon. I'm not going to wire it, but basically you take the cables, run it through to the battery, pretty easy. Now, don't forget to plug your fog lights in and all your looms up the top. Pull all them up and plug them in as well. So what we're going to do next is we're going to put the mesh panel on. So when you put the mesh panel on, you got to put the fairlead on it first, and then you drop the mesh panel on the front. Most of our bars have 3 mesh panels. This new one here has 1 mesh panel, so it's stronger, fits on easier. Okay, so putting the mesh panel on, one of the first things we're going to do is actually plug our radar in. If I go the right way. Cool. Now we're going to plug the hose in. We don't have a ton of room, so we're going to kind of wait till it's all the way up in there. So what we're going to do is get a bolt for the bottom to push your wires in for your lights. And the camera. All right. Now we can try and plug the hose in. And okay, first up, we're going to measure the relationship to the ground to the camera so we can achieve the same figure when we relocate it into the bull bar. So we've got a digital angle gauge here. First things first, with the car settled, not moving, and you're not going to move it when you change it, we put it along the ground here, and we have, what do we have here? Obviously 0, good. Now we supply this little gauge here. What happens is it's got a groove here that fits around the lens of the camera and the squirter, and you basically hold it up nice and flat, and then apply your angle gauge there, and we got 26 degrees. So what we want to do is achieve the 26 degrees when we relocate it. So we're going to pop the bonnet and get the camera out, and then show you how to use the relocation kit. All right, so we need to pull the camera out of its housing here using a T20 Torx bit. Screws are out, pull the whole housing out. Pop it out.
Undo the little
Hose clamp there.
hose.
There you go. Camera's released. Now we're going to take the hose out and the wire out from the grill, release them all so we can relocate them. Okay, so refit the housing here and the screws. So if you or a future driver of this vehicle ever wants to put it back, you can, and you got all your bits and pieces. So we're going to get our trim tool and get rid of all these bits here so we can pull out the hose. Now, if it hopefully just goes, we might have to pull it off from here, if I can. And out it goes. Haha! Hose, done. Sometimes these Christmas trees like to hold on nice and good.
One more.
That's it. All right, next we are going to put the camera into the supplied bracket and cable tie it together. So let's do that now.
So the camera sits tightly in the bracket, and the cable tie goes
On the floor?
on the floor first,
Make sure yours falls on the floor at least once.
and then through that gap there.
Yeah.
And essentially what we're aiming to do is just clamp the camera into the bracket, because the bracket itself locates the camera very precisely. So we just need to clamp it in place.
Don't forget to trim the tail on the cable tie, because if I look at your car and you haven't trimmed the tail, I'll get annoyed.
So you see how that sits perfectly flush with it, and once it's in place, the camera doesn't move relative to the bracket. Doesn't need much to hold it in place, but yeah, that's done.
Okay, so now we are going to run the cable for the camera. So the bit without the large connector, you can plug the camera in now, and you basically run it down through. Let me zoom in there for you. There you go, through that hole there, and you can plug in the camera. And then we'll take the camera, plug it in. Yeah. So then we are going to feed through the hose, right through the center, and plug it into the bottom of the squirter for the camera. And that can push into place now with the screws. Okay, so we've got the screws in now. Now what we need to do is measure the angle of this with the same tool.
And this tool is going to be bigger to go over there properly, but we're just going to do this for the time being. So we're slightly too far down.
Now, if you get a massively different number, your bull bar might actually be tilted a bit too much, and it's not actually close to square or level. So what we need to do now is we're basically just going to bend the bracket slightly.
So we're like less than a degree off.
Okay.
So we just flex that.
So you can just push it or pull it either way, and you're just going to bend the bracket enough that you can get it to the right angle.
So I've actually gone too far now, so I'm going to have to come back a tiny bit.
It doesn't require a hell of a lot of force.
So still slightly over.
Okay, now we are going to put the protective cover on the camera and put some screws in from behind.
There's some captive nuts in it.
This just protects the whole system. If you hit any furry creatures, it should protect your camera. Okay, so now we are going to plug it into the car. We do supply an extension. There you go. So you plug it into the back of the loom from the camera and then run it through the middle and into the original location. And then you're also going to plug in the hose for your little squirter. Okay, we fit the mesh panel, 2 bolts in there, 2 underneath. We're leaving that one off for the bash plate. So what we're going to do now is put the factory bash plate on, and then we're going to put the off-road animal one on. All right, fitting the bash plate, the off-road animal one, sitting on all my bolts. So M8 button heads go through the front here. An off-road animal is super nice, and we put some weld nuts in there for you, so make your life easy. We've got our M8 ones here, and then we got some M10 ones on the bottom that go into the mounts. And button head cap screws, the M10s, underneath. That is where it goes through into this bracket here on the mount. That one there is saved up for the under panel, which is going on next. So now that we've got this one on, we're going to put the factory bash plate on, slide it through there. Sorry, that's not the under panel, it's the factory bash plate goes through there. The under panel mounts up there. So when you mount on these bolts, cage nuts up there. Don't forget your number plate. So on your flip, you can do this before it goes on the car. I find it easier to do after because it does rotate out of your way. And I forgot washers. But put your bolts on, mount your number plate. That's it. All right, putting the under panel on, and we trimmed the inner guard and put in all our bolts in. And we have that one on the inside with the mount we got to do.